We just use like just looked at it, looked at the concept, see what dispatch, see what what's the other words? Sorry. See what
Right.
dispatch is, see what producer is, see what action is, the whole nine. Just to see how it works, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's a really good point. So what Henry's saying, and 'cause Henry sent me a message this week, over the weekend there, and it was like, hey, I know we were just working with Redux, but are we also going to be looking at React Redux? And the answer is like, yeah, we're definitely going to dive into that today. Redux is a pretty large pattern. And it's important to understand that it is this pattern without necessarily having just React involved. It can work without it. And so Redux, let's just go over what the components of Redux actually are. Let's see if we can list some of them out. I've got my nifty whiteboard here. All right. What is the key number one main thing on, oh, actually, I'm just going to let the poll go for just I'm going to show you the poll results first here. So this is where we're at right now. Looks like we're in the 3 and 4 range mostly. A few 2s. So let's get there. No 5s. So that's the goal today. Let's get into some 5s. Okay. All right. Who can tell me the most important part of Redux?
The store.
The store.
The store. Yeah, I heard the store. Okay.
Sorry, I'm driving from Connecticut.
Not dark enough yet. Let me get a darker marker. All right. So let's just write it out. Okay, so we've got our store. And what kind of things do we get from, what do we get back from the store?
Store holds the state.
Okay, so the store holds the state.
Reducers.
Holds state. And when we call, okay, so store holds state.
Yeah.
I agree. How do we get our store?
You
create it.
What's that, Fowler?
You import it from Redux, and then you assign it to a variable, and you create the store, and you pass in a reducer, middleware if you need it, and an initial state.
Excellent. Okay, so what Fowler says is the way we get our store is we are going to import create store from Redux. So we use create store, and create store takes in a reducer. It takes in our initial state. And lastly, it can take in enhancers or middleware. So I'm going to call it enhancers just because that's what the docs will say. But this is where our middleware lives if we need it. Sorry, the writing's small. I'll make it larger. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so that's our store, and we get back. And so from create store, what do we, so from create store, what do we actually get back? Who can tell me that?
from create store.
Yeah.
Wait, did we const Redux?
Sorry?
Did we import Redux?
We've imported Redux. We've invoked create store, and we've passed in the reducer, the initial state, as well as any enhancers that we need.
Mm-hmm.
What do we get back? So Doug, I see you say plain old object. Tell me more about that. Doug? Okay, Doug. Interesting.
So basically, what an action does is interacts with the store.
So yeah, okay. Great point, Henry. Crystal, I see you're writing actions. So actions are something that get dispatched and they get dispatched to a reducer. But what's create store give us back?
Create store.
What does this evaluate to? It's okay to check your notes.
It returns an object with get state, dispatch, subscribe, and replace reducer.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Right? So remember, create store evaluates to this object with get state, dispatch, and we'll say subscribe.
Replace reducer, right?
And replace reducer. That's right. Okay, so remember that's what our create store actually evaluates to. So it creates store, once we get our store, we have the store, but we only have access to it via this get state. Okay? So that's what our create store is. Let's go back over what our actions are. Actions.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That last part of store is replace.
Replace reducer.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so actions. David Marvius, can you unmute yourself for a second?
Yes.
Okay, and answer this. What is an action?
Sorry. It's a function. No, action is, it returns a type and a payload.
Nice. Okay, so action is, so the most, so you gave us 90% of the information there. So our action is an object with property type. Property type and optional payload. Exactly. So the example that we saw Wednesday was we had this type in here where we said like add apple or something along those lines, right? I know, sorry, the handwriting's not ideal. You're asking if it sends data to the store. Okay, right. So almost. So we're just missing a small thing in between there. And that's, we're going to use that store's dispatch method. So we can dispatch an action. And so when we dispatch an action, where does it go? Who can tell me that one?
To the reducer.
Sorry, Jay?
To the reducer?
To the reducer, exactly. So every time an action is dispatched, it goes ahead and hits the reducer. What do we know about reducers?
Reducers, yeah, they have the switch cases, I think, right?
Okay.
And they perform things based on whatever case is hit.
Okay, I like that. So a reducer has by convention, a switch statement,
Also,
and based off of a type, on type, updates the store.
and keep tracks of the state.
Well, the state is this. The store and the state I'm using there as synonymous terms.
Okay.
But yeah, what does a reducer take in as its argument?
Action and type.
Almost half right. So Henry said
And
action.
state.
So action is right. Action has the type property
And a
What-
state.
and a state. Exactly.
And a state.
And the state. So our reducers take in our state and our action. It hits a switch statement where it checks based off of the type property within the action. And then it's going to give us back the new slice of the store. Okay, so let's
Can you just explain the switch based on type?
sure. So if our actions look like an object with type, so they have a type property that points to, let's say, add apple. Our reducer says, in the case of action.type, then it looks, in case of add apple, do one thing. If it's add banana, do another thing. If it's add something else, do that something else. So it's looking at this type property in our actions.
So then where does state come in?
So based off of the type, it's going to return a state. And that state will be used in the rest of our application.
Okay, that's where the state is going to be updated and reused.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Corey,
Yes.
sorry. So like the example that you used on Wednesday with the fruit stand, the action is like, let's say you're adding a fruit. That fruit will be the action, right?
The action is the object
Okay.
with the type property.
That's the action dot type. Like that's what's inside the switch, right?
Right.
And then you're returning, like say when you return like the state and then a banana, right? You're basically, because the state is an empty array, you're adding the banana into that array, right? That's the action. You're adding the banana into the array.
That's correct.
If you then add another apple, then you're adding the apple into the array. You're adding that.
That's right.
Then on the case when there was just whatever fruit you want to do, that's a specific action.payload because it could be any fruit that you're picking going into the state, which is still the empty object. Or the empty array, sorry.
Yeah, that's completely correct. It's not always an empty array. If we've already added something to that store, then that still has to remain. So we would just be adding it in addition to everything else. But something to keep in mind is when we're adding, we're not pushing into the array because we can't mutate our state. One of the key words for our reducers is that they have to be pure functions, which means given the same input, always give the same output and have no side effects. So a push would be a side effect. So instead it gives back a new array with the previous elements inside as well as the new element.
Okay.
Let's take a moment and actually go over the code again of what we did on Wednesday. All right. Make sure I can still see everything. Okay, so Wednesday, we started with this index.js, and we took our create store. We do have an apply middleware. I don't want us to really worry about that. Was just kind of bonus at the end. Don't worry about these for now. and we create our store here, where we say store is create store, and we're taking in our reducer. This is our fruit stand, is our reducer. Let's take a look at what our fruit stand is. Fruit stand is just a function that takes in our state. It defaults to an empty array if there isn't anything already passed in as state, and it takes in our action. Remember, this action is an object that looks like what we see here on line 63. And so we say, okay, action.type, we'll key into it, and we say, if it's in the case that it's add fruit, we're going to return a new array with everything in the previous state now copied over into this array, as well as the action.payload, because our action here also has this payload property, so we can get back this banana.
So Corey, when we return the state and the action, if we were to put action.payload comma state, that would mean that the fruit is going to be added to the front of the array?
Sure, yeah, if we wanted to, you're saying if we did this, dot, 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 state?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it would just be in the front of the array.
Okay. I was just making sure it didn't have to go in like a specific order.
No, the order of that is the dealer's choice. Up to you.
And then your state always has to match like your the return always has to match your state in regards to the type of I guess I'm not sure what to call it, the type of component it is. Like say if state is an array versus an object.
Right, so that's a data that's a data type that you're referring to. And yeah, you should definitely stay consistent. If it's going to take in an array, it should be giving it's just updating the state essentially. I mean, it's returning a new state, but you can think of it as more of an update. So if we change data type, that'd be really confusing to the rest of our code because we wouldn't know what we're dealing with. Sometimes it's an array, sometimes it's an object. That would be hard to program with. But if it's always an array, you know you're dealing with an array. If it's always an object, you're always dealing with that object.
Okay, so for example, if you have an array of objects where the objects have an object inside of them, the best action to do would be to put it in an array because that's what's holding everything together.
I'm not sure I completely understand your example. One of the goals, though, when dealing with state management is we don't want to make too deeply nested of objects and items. That's generally something we try to avoid in programming. So let me see if I can have an example. I don't really want to write it all out. Let's see. So if we had like our posts, let's say we had some posts and it was this object that had a post, like an array of posts. So this had an ID of 1 and it had a body of something else like great movie. And then it has comments associated to it. And these comments are also like items here. This has an ID of 5, let's say, an author ID. Right, this is like a possible data set. But this is starting to get pretty nested. And this is not a way you want to hold your data in your application. It would be better to hold your data where you had a post key that was an object where the ID of each post pointed to this. So it would be 1 pointing to ID 1, body pointing to great movie, and then our comments which would be an array of just the IDs, let's say. So 5. And then you would also have a comments key, where it'd be an object, where your comment is like 5, the ID of it, pointing to the comment itself. This is more of the standard way that you would want your data. You want flat data, and that is called normalizing your state. We're not currently doing anything that's so in depth right now, but when you do ask about nested objects and inside of objects, just know that that probably means you've designed your state. You've set up your state in a way that's going to be less helpful for yourself. Does that make sense, Ashia?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Corey, quick question.
Yes.
Where do we have access to the previous state?
Where do we have access to the previous state?
Yeah, so in fruit scan, all we're doing is just essentially setting the data type, right? Or
are you talking about here?
In just overall, but just, yeah.
So whenever a action is dispatched, and it goes to the reducer, the state is also passed, the current state of the application. So this is the previous state on line 75 there. That just has a default argument in the event that there is no state yet, but otherwise the previous state will be passed along. If you recall, when we wrote our own create store, whenever an action was dispatched on line 44, our function, it takes in the action, but then it actually updates, reassigns the value of our state to whatever the return value is from our reducer receiving the state, which is the current state, as well as the action.
Okay.
Good question. All right, so continuing on, we've got our reducer. It's listening for different types in our actions to return different versions of our state. So we've put that in our create store. We have our initial state here, which I'm having as an empty array for now. I'm also using some middleware to log what's happening. And then we're able to call store.dispatch, and we are passing an action. If you recall, add fruit here is an action creator. So let's go take a look at our actions folder. In our actions folder, we have an actions type file. This looks at the different types that are going to be inside of our actions, right? We had add apple, add banana, clear fruits, as well as add fruit, our most recently added thing, or our most recently added type. Now, who remembers why we are making these constant variables that are just assigned to the string that says the same thing?
The reason why we do them is to avoid any grammatical errors. So we just set them as variables. So we could just call the variable.
Excellent. So just to repeat what Henry says, is the reason we do this is to avoid any grammatical or spelling errors. Can anybody remind me why spelling errors, in this case specifically, suck so much?
Because you don't know exactly where the error come from.
Exactly. So like Siham says, you don't know where the error comes from, and that's because it's going to fail silently. Because if we were to misspell something inside of our switch statement, there's no error that would get thrown if these were all strings, and it would instead just go to our default and keep returning state. So we wouldn't know why nothing was working, and it would fail silently. But by creating a variable, our program will complain and say like, hey, this doesn't exist. You can't write this. So that's why we have these. our other actions should be split up as our different slices by a reducer. But since currently we only have this one slice of state, we have just our fruit actions. Remember, and these are our action creators. So an action creator creates an action, right? So it must return actions. Actions have a type property that give instructions to the reducer on how to update our application state, right? That's where that switch statement comes in. So in this, for this action creator, we have our add fruit. It takes in a fruit and it returns our plain old JavaScript object. This is the action, right? The type, add fruit, and the payload pointing to our fruit. Okay, so that was everything that we went over on Wednesday. Any other questions on that? All right, let me see here. Trying to. Sometimes I highlight over this and it doesn't tell me where to like stop sharing my screen. So that's interesting. I don't know how to stop sharing my screen right now.
You gotta hit the controls at the top where it says you are viewing your screen, and it says view options. You should have a panel at the top that says stop viewing screen.
I know, I should, right? It's not
If you
here.
maybe hit escape. Oh, okay, you did it.
I did it for you.
Oh, okay. I managed to move around anyway. Excellent. That's really weird. Okay, so let's launch the poll again on how we're feeling on the Redux so far. So let's take 2 minutes to fill this out.
I didn't get anything.
Yeah, I didn't see the poll either.
You still didn't get, did anybody not, did everybody not get the poll?
Okay,
I just got it.
Popped up on mine.
Okay, just took a second.
Okay.
Sam, what are you drinking?
Coffee from Starbucks. Well, not from Starbucks, but it's Starbucks brand.
Oh, okay, nice. It's
Yeah.
like, is Starbucks still open?
I don't know, bro. I haven't left my house.
Yeah, nice. Me neither.
So I
It's
don't
still
know.
open. I have one right across the street from me. It's open.
Damn, that's tough.
Yikes.
I don't think it's all of them. I think they closed most of them.
Yeah, most. Yeah, but I went for a walk like a week and a half ago, and they were closed. The ones I saw.
Yeah, because there's one by. I passed a few that were closed, and then I passed a few that were open.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Are they one of those things where it's like independently owned, but like under Starbucks, but it's like whoever owns that Starbucks is like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like
franchises.
Right? There's like different levels where like some of them are just completely like you have to follow all the rules, and then some of them you're the owner and you can kind of do your own
Yeah,
thing. Maybe
yeah.
that's
My store in Manhattan is trying to like stay open no matter what. So they're fighting really hard for that. It's not going well. So stay tuned.
Hey, we've still got a few more people who haven't put in their votes, so let's try to get up to 100% participation.
I gotta say though, this quarantine has made me really efficient. Like I've made my coffee, I've made my breakfast from scratch. It's weird. It's weird times.
Good for you. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Let's share the results with how we are doing here. Still got a 2. If you're in the 2, please keep asking questions. Same with 3, 4. No matter where you are, ask questions. But definitely if you're confused about something, don't let it pass you by, yeah? Okay, but we've definitely moved up since this morning. So let's introduce some React, shall we? Okay, so let's share the screen again. Go to our desktop too. So you should still have your project from the other day where we went into our LS. We had a React Redux fruit stand, we said. So let's go ahead and open that up. Oh, here, it was already open. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and start that up. Make sure that we get something. Give that a second to pick up.
Did you create a React app for this folder?
I did. We did that on Wednesday, so you might have already done it as well. If not, please do that.
So we're gonna open the React fruit stand app that you made us do, right?
That is correct.
Cool. I got it. Let's do it. React is that's right.
Open that React fruit stand app.
Corey, can you make your code a little bit larger?
Sure. Good?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. All right, just give me a yes when when everybody's there on the nonverbal cue inside of the participants thing. Henry, I see your thumbs up reaction. Just so you know, I would like you to look for that participants thing. Just because I can't see all the screens at once. You happen to be in focus for me, but everybody else isn't. We've got 9 yeses so far. Moving on up, moving on up. I was listening to Howard Stern. They said that was the best television theme song. Interesting. I still like Beverly Hillbillies. Do you have a favorite? I was doing I think it's the Jacksons, right? Or not the Jeffersons.
Yeah, that was the Jeffersons.
Yeah, Jeffersons.
My favorite one is X-Men, the one that they rip off from Whitney Houston.
How's it go?
I don't know. Da-da-da-da-da-da. That's it. That's all.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Is that the one where they're in high school?
Yeah.
That was my shit. I'm not gonna lie.
Good. They copied out from Whitney Houston.
Hey, so we're still waiting for a few people left.
Corey, is the React Redux fruit stand inside of the React Redux intro?
I made it in just side of our unit 5.
Okay.
Gonna hopefully we can get a couple more. Oh, Seinfeld, boom, 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 something like that. Seinfeld's great. Okay, well, we've been stuck at 17 for a while, which is around the amount of people that filled out the survey. So maybe not everybody is really involved. So I'm going to operate as if there's 18 people. Okay. All right.
Create React app.
Yes.
I'm almost there though.
Okay. Give you another minute.
Just so I'm clear, so in this folder right now, we have the app, and then we have to do npmi Redux.
Sure, we haven't done that yet, but let's go ahead and do that now. Good idea. Let's install our Redux. So we'll say npmi Redux, and let's also do React Redux.
You can do them at the same time?
Yep.
Okay,
Just separate them by a space.
gotcha.
Mine's is still pretty fast. Is that normal? I'm scared.
Is it, yeah, that is normal. Redux is a very small package.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about Redux. It's one of the more negative things about Redux Toolkit, which we will go back. Redux Toolkit is quite a bit bigger than Redux, although a lot of that is because of all the things it does to remove all the boilerplate code. So that's just something that's interesting. Redux Toolkit is better, a lot more user-friendly, and we'll get to that. But it is a larger package, while Redux is so small. I mean, we wrote most of what Redux was on Wednesday from scratch. It's not a lot of code. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is get organized with my folders. So I'm going to make a folder called Store. I'm going to make a folder called Reducers. I'm going to make a folder called Actions. Oops, I accidentally made that inside Reducers. And I think I'll make my components folder as well, like I usually do in React. Components. I think I butchered the spelling of that. Components. That will do. Jenny, am I way off?
Wait, so sorry, we need actions, components, and what else? And reducers?
Reducers and store.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problemo.
And this is inside the SRC.
Yes. All right, so we've just added these folders because we know we're going to fill it up. We know Redux uses actions. We know Redux uses a store. We know Redux uses reducers. So we're just going to separate them all out right away. This is one type of structure, something that's gaining popularity because of Redux Toolkit is to separate things by feature. But for now, since we're still using traditional Redux, let's do it by separating out different things by what they do. All right, so let's go for it. So let's go inside of our store. Let's create a new file, and we'll just call this store.js. What do we think we're going to do in here?
Create a store.
Exactly. Thank you, Marvin. Right, we're going to create a store. So to create a store, what's the first thing I need to import?
Redux.
Create store from Redux.
That's right. I got to import create store from Redux. So import create store from Redux. And let's go ahead and make this store. So let's say const store is equal to create store. And what does create store take in? What's the first argument?
Be careful. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Initial state, right?
So initial state is the second argument. I like that. But it's the second argument. What's our first argument that create store takes?
Reducer?
Reducer, yeah. This is the only one that's required. So I'm going to call this I'm gonna call this root reducer. I'm just gonna call it reducer for now. We'll adjust that later, probably tomorrow. Okay, so we'll say reducer for now. And the other arguments are all optional. So let's not add any for now. The other arguments being takes in reducer, initial state, as well as enhancers / middleware. Okay. So now we've got our store. Now we see, well, we don't really have this reducer yet. And we should also export our store. So let's export default store. But where do we get this reducer?
You will have to import it from the reducer folder.
That's right. This is really like the classic chicken and egg kind of thing. You know, we need the reducer to write the store. Without the store, the reducer's not really doing as much. So we are setting up this store as if we have the reducer, but let's go ahead and make our reducer. So I'm going to call this, let's make a new file. I'm just going to call this fruit stand reducer. Just because in the future we'll have multiple reducers. It's very common to have multiple reducers and how decide how much each reducer should take in and what should be important for each reducer. So this reducer I'm going to borrow from the code that we wrote on Wednesday. So I'm going to go over to my node modules here. And I'm just going to make this fruit stand reducer. And I'm going to call this fruit stand reducer just to be a little bit more clear. I'm going to get rid of these statements because we're just going to deal with add fruit. And let's go ahead and export this. And give me a yes in the nonverbal chat when you're there. In the meantime, who can tell me what we're missing?
Import.
What importing what?
If export default.
We've got export default on line 15.
Oh, and you need to import
For the action.
forget it.
That's right. We've got to import these action types.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to say add fruit, clear fruit from dot slash or dot slash action slash, and I'll say action types dot, which we don't, again, we don't currently have, but we will. So we're at just 8 people, so let's just give it a couple more minutes here to catch up.
I'm driving home from Connecticut, but I'm following.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm driving home from my mom's in Connecticut, but I am following.
Oh, okay, got it. I'll count you as a yes. Thanks, Jay.
Corey,
Yes.
you imported it from action/actions type. Which folder is that? Is that the folder we just made, or is that from Wednesday's lecture?
Well, it's a reference to, we haven't made that file yet, but that's what we're going to do. It's identical to Wednesday's lesson. We're just moving all of that Redux stuff into this project so that we can then use React to connect it. Oh, I'm so sore today. I did 100 pull-ups yesterday. That was my goal. It took me about an hour, but I am hurting so bad today, like everywhere. Did not know all of those muscles were involved in pull-ups. Lesson learned.
Yeah, pull-ups are hard.
It's like arms, back, chest, abs. I didn't know it was everything. I thought it was just like your back.
No, it's every component back there. It's freaking like I thought. Like I'm good at push-ups. I could do 50, knock them out, but I can't do pull-ups. They're so much harder.
They are horrible, but I want to do more. My friends and I like to get together. Well, not anymore, but we would get together every Friday and exercise at the park. And so my goal is after quarantine, I want to wipe the floor with them on pull-ups.
Yeah.
It's the only piece of, like, I have a pull-up bar at the house, and that's the only equipment I have. So that's like all I'm doing.
There you go. Just do that. I just bought some resistance bands, so I can do like squats and other stuff. I'm waiting for it to come in the mail.
Very cool.
I can't do no push-ups. I mean, no working out for this quarantine. It's too much.
Yeah, I've got some resistance bands. They're great. Okay, so we're gonna keep moving. Morning stretch routine or yoga. I like yoga at Milburgh, but I haven't been doing it as much. I've gotten lazy, or as my wife says, lacy. But I'm working on it. That's her accent. All right, so let's keep going. Let's go ahead and add those import types instead of our actions. So I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to create my new file called action types. Types.js, and I'm going to again rip what I wrote the other day. Just this. And export those like so.
Corey.
Yep.
Sometimes when I do it that way, when I export the way you just did, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Why is that?
It's probably has to do with how you're importing. So it always works, but you may be importing it incorrectly. So when you export like this, you have to import like this. Whatever, right? When you export default, something like clear fruits, then you have to import clear fruits.
Okay, got it. From and then the route.
Yeah.
Wait, you still putting the route, where you got it from?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
So that's the difference between those. Am I not sharing my screen? Sin?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, I lost part of it. Okay. Never mind. My bad. Cool. Okay, so then let's also go ahead and make our action creator file. So we'll say file, and we'll say, I'm going to call this fruit stand actions.js. And I'm going to take everything again from the other day. Whatever, I'll deal with that over here. I don't need these. Import from /. Action types. Whoops. We have add fruit, clear fruits. This will be, I'll just export these here. Okay. Cool. So something that I want to show, I think this should work, is we should be testing things as we're moving along. And so a way that I can do this, I believe, is down here I could say like window, or I'll import these somewhere else. Hang on. Okay, so we have, I'm going to assume we're all here. This is the same as what we wrote in the past. So inside of our index.js, we have our typical React app. And so ways I can test things as I go is by putting functions on the window. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to import add fruit from /actions/fruit stand actions. Wait, did I make a mistake? No. Okay. If you're here, so I'm assuming I have that. Now inside here on line underneath, I'm going to say window dot add fruit equals add fruit. So what's this do? So if I'm writing this, because I kind of cheated a little bit because we'd already written a bunch of stuff. But if I was writing this from scratch for the first time and I created this action creator, and I should check that it works. So I write window.addFruit equals add fruit. And this is going to put this function, this is adding a property to our window object that points to this function, add fruit. So inside of our code here, even though we've got nothing going on in our application, let me make that a little larger. Can you see that okay? Nod, yeah, if you can see it okay.
Yes.
If you can't, just complain. Okay. You can stop nodding. Everybody looks like a bunch of chickens. And gobble, gobble. We will go window dot, and you can see now we have this function here, add fruit, that we've successfully added to the window. So let's go ahead and invoke it. I'll pass a kiwi in, and we can see that we do get back this object with type add fruit, payload kiwi, and we go, okay, radical, that works. You know, cool beans. We can do this with anything we want. We can add things to the window to easily check that they're working in our console as we're going along. Questions on that?
Yeah, can you go back to the index.js file, please?
Yep. So line 8 is the interesting line there. Because if we remember, window is the object. That is the window of the screen. And so we're just adding a property with dot notation called add fruit, and we're assigning that the value of the function that we've imported on line 6 called add fruit. That was really hot. That coffee was too hot. Fuck. Okay. And just like any good coding practices, right? When you're done and you've checked that your function works, you should delete it. I'm not going to delete it just so you have it as reference. I'm going to comment it out. But in your applications that Jenya, John, and myself look at, it should be deleted. We don't want to see that, like, we want to see that everything works and believe that you're testing your code because everything works. We don't have to see the test, that test at least in itself, okay? Capiche?
Capiche, can you show your fruit stand actions?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
Do you want us to keep the add app on add banana there?
No. Thank you. Good catch. They don't exist, right? We don't even have those in action types. I'm surprised it doesn't throw an error, but interesting. It didn't.
That's because you're not running React yet.
I am running React. Oh, maybe I just didn't see the errors. Let's see. No, it does. It just says it doesn't. It just doesn't care. Interesting. Let me make that a little prettier. Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break before. So this is pretty much everything we've done on Wednesday. We've caught up. We've added all of our Redux into this application, and then all that's left now is we're going to add React and Redux. So let's take a break before we dive into that next section. So let's come back at 11:05. Okay. I'll write in the chat. Be back at 11:05. Whoops, I almost wrote 50. You almost got lucky. All right. I will pause the recording, so if somebody can remind me. Well, actually, I don't see where to pause it. I just see where to stop it. No, let's stop. Okay, I'll stop the share, and then I can pause. All right, I'm gonna resume the screen share. Screen share. You have to screen the share. And let's get rolling. Let me open the manage participants so I can still see that and the chat. I wish I had a third screen because all of the participants and things block my second screen. So I just have to do it all like from memory, but it's annoying because I don't like to code that way. I like to have a reference, but whatever. So let's add some React Redux, shall we? So something we want to import in here is, from React Redux is, we will call it the provider. So the provider provides, very much like the household. They call it the provider is the one that brings in the money and whatnot. Like in React Redux, the thing that's going to give the rest of our application access to our Redux state is this provider. This is the same terminology that you'll be using when you also learn about React Context API. It's a great name because it's providing something to you. So let's go ahead and import that. So we will import provider from React Redux, right? You can see we've now left the pure Redux world. Now we're connecting it to a React app. Okay. And so the provider is kind of fun. The provider is a high order component, which essentially is code that injects other code into components. I'm not sure if we've really gone over high order components before. Let's go ahead. I guess let's go ahead and make one. Yeah, let's go ahead and make a high order component for fun. So I'm going to make a new file inside of our components, and I'm just going to call this to-do app. Oh no, that's not to-do. I'm sorry. Fruit stand app. Fruit stand. I don't remember which casing I want to use. Maybe capital. Fruitstand.js. And I'm going to call this permanent greeting component. Let's say new file. I'll call this wrapper just so we can remember what it is. We're not really going to use this for anything today, but you could use this for certain styling of things or components. So I'm just gonna say wrapper. This is how our routes work when we were using React DOM router. So let's make our fruit stand, and we'll just say that it's and we say const is a fruit stand. It's been a little while since I wrote React now. I'm like, feel like I'm forgetting stuff here. And our fruit stand will say is going to return. We'll just make it a div that says like lots and lots of fruits. Let's export default. Our fruit stand. All right, so it's doing almost nothing, right? And inside of our app.js, let's go ahead and import that. So we will import fruit stand from /component/fruit stand. And if I have it in here, it will call this component just like normal React, and we should see, wait, where is the browser? Oh, here it is. Got moved. Hang on, sorry. Interesting. Don't see anything.
Corey?
Yep.
I'm getting an error for some reason that says cannot read property get state of undefined.
Not sure yet what. Oh, you know what? This might be because we haven't, because of the way our provider isn't fully set up yet.
Okay.
So let's just for now, let's go back to our index.js and just comment out the provider lines. See if that makes a difference. Huh. Why is this?
Yeah, it works now.
Yeah, it's working for you.
Lots and lots of fruits.
You're getting that?
Yeah.
Why am I not getting that?
Yeah, I get mine
Same.
too.
I'm getting it too.
Yeah. Well, I should be getting it.
Yeah. Everything's slow though. I'll tell you. React has been acting weird.
Am I recording again? I think so. Yeah, I am. Let's see. I got some messages.
Corey,
Okay.
you said comment out the provider, right?
Yes. It should work. I'm just kind of confused why mine isn't working yet. Fruit stand. This looks good. There's no error. What the heck is going on? Maybe I'll just start closing tabs. Too many tabs open.
Mine isn't working neither.
Interesting. I'm going to go ahead and close stop React and just run it again.
Once I comment out the provider started working.
Yeah, that should be what it takes. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing my error at all. I don't think I have an error. Let's. So I'm surprised that it's not working. Oh, cannot read property get state.
Yep, that's the error.
Let's see. Oh, at least I have an error now.
That's the same error I got. And then you told me to comment out the thing on index.js. You comment out the wrapper. Or
oh, I must have not. maybe I didn't save. What? This is the old code, right?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me close that. Sure, I'll save whatever. Okay, everything
works.
seems to be working now. Okay, great. So we have lots and lots of fruit. I'm sorry about that. Not really my fault, but whatever. So just to demonstrate what a wrapper component is, let's go ahead and write another component here. So I'm going to import React from React. I'm just going to call this wrapper for whatever reason. This is like what our routes are. This will take in props, and I will return, and I can, not the object, sorry. I can return anything I want. Let's pretend I want to always have it say like, look, I'm wrapping, yeah. And then I can also do, in JSX, I could say props.children. And then I could write like, still wrapping. Okay. So if I do this, I'll start this with a W, sorry, capital W. Whoops. And we'll say export default wrapper. So this is called a high order component. And essentially all it does is it's going to have a component inside of it. So if I import this into app, so let's go ahead and import our wrapper from /component/wrapper. I was really not consistent with the casing. I apologize for that. I can go like this. Wrapper. And this has a opening and closing, and I can put components inside. These components will get passed into wrapper as props, and props.children will give me whichever components are here. So let me demonstrate. We go over here and we see, look, I'm wrapping lots and lots of fruit, still wrapping. Okay, so that's what a wrapper component does. So a wrapper component could be like injecting code essentially into fruit stand. It could do things. It could change the styles of everything around it. So that's what a wrapper component or a high order component is. Are there any questions on just that?
Would you mind just explaining that one more time, please?
Sure. And let me just fix the casing because it's driving me nuts. So a wrapper component is just a component, just like our route. Like from when we did React Router DOM, we had this route that was a wrapper, wrapped components. And whenever we went to a certain path, it would display the children inside. So inside of wrapper, the props that get passed are under props.children is like these items. It's an array of components. So if I could do it again, if I do 2 of them, it will have 2 children. And we'll see like now we have lots of fruits. And we're having access to that just by passing props in. And the props.children will be whichever components we put inside of it. And we're using JSX to write props.children to see those components. So just keep passing them along. But hypothetically, you could be injecting code into these children.
Okay.
So if props.children wasn't there, it wouldn't show the other component.
Good point. Yeah. Here. So I will remove props.children, and now we just see, look, I'm wrapping, still wrapping. It's the props.children that are whatever components that are put on inside of that. So if you ever wanted to write your own React Router DOM library, like you would be looking into that. If you wanted to write personalized routes, here, I'll show you an example of that.
That's what I was gonna ask. Like, this is taking the format of a lot of like library components.
Yeah, a lot of libraries do this. I think Modal is one of them as well. But like, let's say in this application that I wrote, we have, I have like some protected routes. Oh, this is an old version. Let's see if it's better in this one. Right, so I have this protected route. So only when the path, if they're logged in, when the path is a slash, do I want the nav bar to be shown. Right, so protected route is something that I wrote. And I wrote that in util route util. So we'll go to route util. And it's written very much in this same way. Well, we'll see how this goes. But essentially, it's taking from props, it's destructuring the children because it wants whatever's inside as well as the rest of the things inside of it. Use selector we'll go over today, but it's checking something in state, or the store essentially, and then it's saying like, hey, render from our route, take if we're logged in, go ahead and show the children. Otherwise, just redirect. It's a little confusing. I don't want us to get too caught up in the details of that. I just want us to see that props.children are the components that are inside that are being wrapped.
Can you show where you're wrapping the children?
Sure. So in our app.js, it's being wrapped. It's not a self-closing component like the other ones.
Okay.
Notice it has an opening tag and a closing tag, and we have components inside. Any other questions on that? All right, so I'm going to get to the kind of the exciting stuff here. So I'm going to remove wrapper, and I only want to have one fruit stand anyway, because our wrapper isn't doing jack right now. Maybe I should leave it in for reference. Oops. But I'm just going to comment it out because it's not really doing anything. It's just there to exist for you. Okay, so back into our index.js, we have this provider, which is a wrapper component, right? We had this with React Router DOM when we did browser router. That was another wrapper component. It wrapped all of our code and injected things into its children. So provider takes in an argument, and it takes in a store. So we're going to say store. And the store should be our application store. So let's go ahead and import our application store. So I'll say import store. Whoa, why is it doing that? From /store/store. And I'm going to pass store. It says my reducer is not defined. Cool. Does everybody else have that same error?
Let me see.
Yeah, I have the same error.
Okay, great.
Same error.
Same error, yeah.
Okay, right. Because excellent. So we should all be having that same error. And so we can look. This is from our store.js. It looks like it's line 27 or so. So we'll go to our store.js, or it's line 3, sorry. 3, probably character 27, my mistake. And we can say, oh yeah, well, we didn't do anything with a reducer, right? We need to import our fruit stand reducer. Import, I think we called it fruit stand reducer from dot slash reducer slash fruit stand reducers. I don't know why I made that plural. And instead of passing in reducer, I'm going to write fruit stand reducer. Save that. Right? Because we have to pass in a real reducer. We can't just pass in the word reducer. It's a good error. That's fair. Give me a yes when you're here. A yes in the nonverbal messenger. Right, so all we've really done here is synced up our correct reducer. Everything is still the same that it was in the old days, back when we just had Redux, but except for the addition of our provider, which is part of the React Redux, which takes in that store. What do we remember about the store? What is the store?
Hey, Corey, quick, can you go back to the index.js, please?
Yep. Who knows, like when I'm importing store right here, what is store? What does store look like? Who can tell me? I'll give you a hint. This is the same question that was asked, one of the same questions that was asked in the beginning when we were going over on the whiteboard.
So the store is the state?
The store is not actually the state.
It has a dispatch, reducer, or dispatch.
Okay, wait. Okay, Danny, so you've named one. So Danny says we're getting back an object with some functions attached to it. One of those functions is dispatch. Okay, who can give me another?
Subscribe.
Yeah.
Subscribe, yeah, okay.
Replace
Repeat it.
reducer.
Get state.
Who said that?
Maria.
Maria, nice. Get state, perfect. What's the last one?
Replace reducer.
Oh, Deja
Replace
and
reducer.
I think Maria, right? Replace reducer, exactly. We're not going to use replace reducer just because it's kind of got more rare use cases, and we're not going to use subscribe because our subscribe is going to be something built in with React Redux. We're going to use to subscribe to any changes. Subscribe is more for like when we're just using Redux by itself. But we will be using our get state and dispatch. These are going to become really handy because our store is the application store and it does keep track of the state, but that method is get state still and dispatch. So that's what the store is. That's part of what's being injected or passed into our React Redux so that we'll have certain things available to us. Which I'm pretty excited about. We still only have 10 people that are at our yes, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer. We should get up to around 17.
Corey, remember that time when I told you that I always have trouble exporting the action types like in one line?
I do remember that time. That was today.
Yeah, that was today. I'm still having that error.
Okay.
It says module not found. Can resolve action. Well, where the path I saved it in.
Is your path wrong?
Nah, it's not.
Just 1 second. Oh, this is my fruit stand reducer. And then Henry, why don't we let you share your screen? Ohito, are you good with this? Okay,
Yeah,
this is
yeah. As I'm getting the clear fruits is not exported from action types. So.
I had a similar error because of spelling for me.
you probably have to export it. Then you probably haven't exported it yet. Henry, let's look at your error. I'm stopping the share. Henry, you want to share your screen? Throw it up.
Sure. Although,
Take a look. See. Oh, Garen with the dog. Love it. Module not found in your reducer. Action types. Yeah, you're not using a ./ or it's not the right path that you're importing from. But I think it's .. because you have to go up one.
yes, you do.
So your path is just wrong.
Okay.
All
Thank
right. All right, let's go back. Keep giving me those yeses when you're here. We got 14. We're waiting on 3. What's going on with you 3? Or you're 2? With you 1? Okay. One more. Oh yeah. Satisfying and delightful. Let's keep rolling. So we're there. So we inside of our index.js, we've passed the stuff to the provider. Now, the next thing I'm going to tell you is I don't want us to get too confused. So I saw with Jimmy, the example you guys used, you had these container components, yes?
Yeah.
Do we remember that, the word containers? Yeah, sorta. So before hooks, back when everything was like a lot of things were still class components, there was this huge idea with separating state components and stateless, like presentational components, right? There was this big push. And so anything that had to do with state had its own component, and anything that had no state, that was purely presentational, had its own component. Okay, so this was this idea, and the things that you would do in your container component were usually to use this function that we're not using as much anymore. I'm going to demonstrate that to you now, but I don't want us to get too caught up. Okay, can we do that? Okay, so don't get too caught up. Probably more just watch than follow if you want. I mean, you can still follow, but let's say we have our containers, and inside of my container, I'm going to write my fruit stand container, and I would say fruit stand container.js. And inside of here, we would use this function to connect our state or our Redux store state, application state, with our React app. And we would use that with a function called connect. So we used to say import connect from React Redux. Okay, and then I would also grab the component that I wanted to pass information into. So I would say import, I would say, let's say fruit stand component. I think I'm just calling it that, from .. component / fruit stand. And connect took in 2 functions, essentially. It took in this map. It was called map state to props. So you might see this in old code. And map dispatch to props. And, oh, sorry, this is one function, I think. And then it also took in a component. So remember when we went over closures on Wednesday a little bit, where a function returned a function that we could then invoke? That Do we remember that at all? Yes? No?
I remember that.
Not
All
really.
right. Vote in the nonverbal. Yes or no if you remember the closure talk. Rafid, that's the chat. Maria, that's the chat. Try to do it in the button where you click the yes no, because then I can see the whole numbers of everybody.
Is it this? No, wait.
You have to click on participants.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, if you click on participants, you can give me these cues, and it creates these tallies so I can really see how we're doing. So that's everyone who's voted. People are, so we actually got 20 people going on. Ooh, 21. What's going on here? Okay. So let's just go over that again lightly. I think I have it still in the old function. CD into Redux intro. So going back into our code from Wednesday, let's just make a new file for now to separate things. And I'm just going to call this, wait, what happened? I don't want in my actions. Sorry. Don't want in my actions. File. I'm going to call this closures.js. And a closure, a very common closure, is a function that returns a function. And it's closed over the variables. We saw this before already with when we created our own create store. We had this function that has its own state. It has functions inside of here, and then it returns this object. And these objects, like get state, this function refers to a variable that's been closed over, right? And so another example of that was we saw this really basic kind of adder. Let's go back to that one. So we'll go to adder. This is a function that takes an x, and it returns a function that takes an y, and that function returns x plus y. This can be shorthand written to const adder, which takes an x, which returns a function that takes an y, that returns x plus y. Okay? So the way this works is I could reuse parts of this function. So I could say like const add 5 was the example we looked at the other day. And we could say that that's equal to adder, and we can pass in a 5. And let's go ahead and make an add 10, and we'll pass in a 10. And so if I were to console log like add 5, we can see that it's a function. So I'm going to say node closure, and we see, okay, add 5 is this function, and it's an uninvoked function. But now I could invoke it, and I could say, all right, let's pass in 6 here. So it's going to add 5 to whatever number I pass in. So we should get 11, which we do. Let me make that a little larger if you can't see it. Oh, made everything big. Oh, well. Questions on that? And so another way that I could invoke this, which maybe I forgot to show you, I could go adder. All right, let me console log this whole thing. And I'll call adder the original, and I'll say 9, and I'll make my second invocation of 10. So what I'm expecting here is that this will run first, creating a function that's going to save 9. And then that function is going to be immediately invoked and pass 10. So I should be console logging 19. And I do. Okay, so this is just kind of a small intro to closures. I know we didn't go too deep into them on Wednesday, which is okay.
So adder 9 is equal to the x of the adder, and the 10 is equal to the y.
Yep. So this is a function that returns a function, and that function returns an argument from the very first call as well as this most recent call. So when we call adder and pass in the 9, we're receiving a function with the 9 already saved. We then invoke that function immediately and pass in 10, and it still remembers that it has this 9 from the first invocation. And so it goes 9 plus 10 and gives us back our 19.
So how do you read line 13? Excuse me. How do you actually read that in like?
What do you mean by that?
Like, how you would read, if you were to say, like, I'm trying to understand like how the function is read itself. Like,
Well,
adder
this evaluates,
Mhm.
and then this evaluates.
So but I think it's like the 9 is considered x, and then it's returning a y value, which is a 10, which returns x plus y.
It doesn't return 10, it returns a function. That function is being invoked and being passed the number 10.
And then you're returning that 9 plus 10.
Right, because that's what this function returns, right? X plus y.
Right.
So it takes in the y here, and it returns the x plus the y. Which is a little odd, I know. But it's cool. It really leads to some powerful coding and programming because you can protect variables and whatnot. You can keep them hidden. So with this in mind, even if we don't fully understand it, but with this in mind, we can look at the older way we used to write connect, and we can see this was a function that took in map state to props and map dispatch to props. These are both callback functions that we haven't written yet. And then this function would return this fruit stand. I know, it's a little weird. And so then...
So that can, I'm sorry to cut you off guard. That connect is a closure? Is that what you were basically getting at?
Well, it uses closures. It's a function.
Okay, cool.
This is the function that takes in 2 arguments that returns a function that takes in a component.
Got it. Okay, cool. I got a bit lost. All right.
Yeah, no problem. It's definitely a little odd. I totally get that. Especially the first couple times you see it. It's really weird.
Question: is there anything under the hood of the connect function?
Is there anything under? There's a lot going on under the hood. Yeah. That's all this code is happening. I'll show you a little bit more. So let's go ahead and make map state to props because that's a function we haven't written yet. Map state to props takes in the state and an optional own props variable. And all this does is return an object, interestingly. And this object that it returns are the pieces of state. This state refers to the application state. So a lot of the times when you are dealing with reducers, you have more than one reducer, and each reducer represents its own state. We'll get there later. But for now, I'll just put a debugger here. And we can look at what state is in a minute. And then we also would have this const map dispatch to props, which would take in dispatch. This is the same kind of dispatch that we're getting from the store. Also, optional own props. For just so your own reference, own props is how you'd get parameters, params. So when we would want to get like to know which item we're on, we would used to do like own props dot match dot params dot id. Remember that from React Router DOM? Like the old way when we would say this dot props dot match dot params dot id. This was how you would do it before. I see that I think I've lost a lot of you. Own props is just the way we used to access a lot of the time the parameter in the URL, but you didn't always need it. Map dispatch to props. This also would return an object, and this object is what we would pass to this component. So let's say we had this add fruit. We would say add fruit, and we would pass in a function that would take in the fruit, and then it would dispatch our action creator add fruit, where we would pass in the fruit. So this is where the actions are. So we'd have to import our action. Remember, this is more just like old style. So don't get too worried. You don't have to remember everything here, but you may see it again someday when you're hired and dealing with older code. Our connect, we'd have to export default this, like so. In my fruit stand, I'm gonna go ahead and pretend that I'm taking in props. I'm gonna put a debugger in here as well. And now, because fruit stand gets exported into our container, and our container exports fruit stand inside of our app, we wouldn't import fruit stand, but we would actually import fruit stand container from /containers/ fruit stand container, and our fruit stand would be container, like that. This is the old way of writing it. Add fruit is not exported from actions. Is that true? That's not true. Let me see what's wrong. I probably... Oh, not action types. / fruit stand actions. My mistake. Okay, so now we have, see, we still see lots and lots of fruit. Let's see what I should be hitting our debugger though. Is anybody else, or maybe no one else typed along, right?
You go back to the code, please, real quick. What you imported or what you changed? Actions.
Oh, I just imported from the correct actions instead of the types. Let me kill this again, just in case. I typed too fast. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying for everybody to type along because this is the older way of writing it. But this is what a classic container component used to look like, where we would have, here we go. I hit the debugger this time. We see our props is this empty object. Let me continue. I think we'll hit our other debugger. Oh, add fruit is not exported. I thought I already fixed that. Did I not save? Okay, great. So we've hit our map state to props, and we see state is an empty object, which makes sense because this is what our state is, right? We had that. It's just empty still. It's our cart, right? It's coming. That's coming in from our store, where we can have an empty our fruit stand reducer, which is just having this empty state. All right, so this is like, okay. So that's what we're seeing here. And then we're not passing anything. So for right now, I'm just going to update my container to be fruits pointing to state. So as state changes, here I'll console log our state. Let's add a little bit of functionality to our app right now, just so we can actually see something happening. So let's go to our fruit stand component, and let's add a button that just says add apple. And on click, let's go ahead and fire this function that we're going to get off of our props. I have a syntax there somewhere. Okay. Hey, just hang tight with me. We're going to fire this function, and we're going to fire the props.add fruit. This is a function we're getting through props, which we're passing in our dispatch to props. That's coming in via our connect. And we'll just pass in apple. And let's do another one that's banana. And just for fun, I'm just gonna console log our props.fruits. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what happens. It looks like I've got a syntax error somewhere. No complaints over here. I swear my React is acting so weird today. Getting really annoyed with this logo is not defined thing. So I'm just gonna remove that because it's driving me nuts. All right, let's restart our React again. Don't know why that's happening. So this is the old way. You can see why this is kind of like a lot. There's a lot to this connection the old way. We're lucky that we're not really gonna have to write like this. It's the way I had to learn it. And it was a complete pain in the butt. I also learned it at the same time as React, so I didn't know what was like React and which was Redux, and it was super confusing because it was just like learning a lot of things. So we're really lucky that we have more time to hopefully get to explore this. I don't know why nothing is happening. If anybody sees an error or something, let me know. Because we're just kind of like hanging, it looks like.
Does it have anything to do with something in the fruit stand container JS? That's the only thing that's being shown on the screen, right? That should be on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, we should be seeing. This looks pretty good to me. Like this looks This looks good. This shouldn't be.
What usually helps me if if the React app is doing this is to close the actual tab and then let it reopen a new one.
Okay. Let's try that. Huh. Okay, we'll let it open it. Is that what you're saying? Let's try.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll close it. Start it. Anybody else who is able to type along, hitting it successfully? Oh, here we go. There we go. Nice. Oh, good. Excellent, Nover. Okay, so we can see that we have this fruit stand props, which now has this props. Oops. Where'd that go? Well, okay, so it was working, and then it freaked out. Hopefully you got to see that it was there for a split second. I'm gonna remove the debuggers because something is driving me nuts. I already had removed the debuggers, is that right? Command Shift F. Do I have debugger anywhere? No. Oh, okay. So I have no debuggers. Great. Maybe it will work. Oh, did I already close it? Sorry. I should be seeing those buttons. No, but you're seeing the buttons, correct?
Yeah.
So the issue is on my end, my computer, I think. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that the code works. Ah, this is so frustrating. Because it's not telling us of any mistakes. Okay, well, fuck it. Let's just move on. All right, one last try, and then we're gonna move on. I know the code's right. Like, well, I think it. I mean, I just don't see anything wrong with it. If this doesn't work, if I was doing this on my own, what would I do? I'd probably restart my machine.
You're supposed to have 3 buttons that says add apple, add apple, add apple, right?
No, it says add apple and add banana. It's 2 buttons.
Oh.
But yeah.
Oh, my one shows us 3 buttons. Well, I made 3.
Well, you must have made 3 buttons.
Yeah, but they all say. Oh, okay, yeah. So mine is working then.
Yeah, if they say add apple, it's because that's what you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote add apple. I'm looking at the.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like not even opening up a new tab right now. What the hell is going on here? Oh, it's over here too. Okay. This is driving me nuts.
Sometimes I get this issue and I have to open it in an incognito window.
Yeah, incognito window? Sure, let's try that. Hey, cool. All right, whatever. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got this incognito window. We can see that this is our current state, I think. So I'm gonna add an apple, and we see apple gets added. I can add banana, and we're able to add elements. Okay, that's that's all we're seeing. On our props, we're seeing our props.fruit, so that's where that's coming from. Our container, let me just say state here and say state. And then inside of our fruit stand, we'll just console log props. That was a really weird bug. I'm sorry, everybody, about that. It was like wasted like 10 minutes. Super annoying. Okay, so we can see our state here is this empty array. Our props has this fruits array that's empty, as well as this add fruit function. I'm going to add an apple, and we see that we hit our map state to props, which is updating our apple, and our props remains now but fruit. So the pattern is a little interesting with these. So the way things work is it goes in this order. It goes to the container. Well, it goes from the reducers to the container, and then it goes to our component. I'm just going to write comp. In our comp, we can click actions that are passed in through the props, and those actions go to the reducer. The reducer updates the store or state of the application, which then will hit the container again. And if there's changes, then it will show again the component. So it follows this kind of order. So it's a little weird. Where at the container, we see our component. We do an action that gets dispatched that we're getting through our props from map dispatch to props. It hits the reducer. The reducer updates the application state, which therefore updates the container, which is our map state to props, map dispatch to props, and then in doing so, then gets passed the new information to our component. Right? So it's a little bit of this cycle over and over again. And you can see that the code is okay. The code is okay, right? It's all right. Oh, you know what? I did all that whiteboarding while sharing my screen, didn't I? Someone should have said something. Here, now you can see it a little bit better. Let me just go through it again. We go through the container to the component. When we dispatch our actions, click on like add fruit or something, it hits our reducer, things get dispatched to the reducer. It checks what action, it updates the current application state, which moves down to the container, because the container has an update. Our container is our map state to props, map dispatch to props, which is being connected to our component. And so when there's a change in those things, we then go back to our component. Okay, so it's this cycle. It's okay if you don't have that completely memorized at the moment, but that is how older code bases are written. So when you get a job, if you deal with some old code, there's a chance that it's going to look like that, which is okay. Don't freak out, because you'll have been a little bit familiar with it. And so back when it was written like this, these containers, this was where all of the state was supposed to live. And so really I should be destructuring this, right? I would say add fruit, and I would say fruits, because that's what I'm getting in, so I can get rid of my props. And I can do things like that. This I could just say, oh, I think it's fruit. I called it. What did I call it? I called it fruits. I did call it fruit. Okay. Props is not, yeah, right. And I no longer have props. Okay, so that's the old way. So with the adage of hooks, game changer, right? So now there's a lot of discussion on whether container components are even needed. In my world, I say no. I think we're moving away from that that type of formatting. So let's write this again now. And instead of my container component, I am it's in my app.js. I'm not going to do container, but instead I'm going to go back to what I originally had, which was just my fruit stand. Okay, so I'm not going to use the container at all. Okay, so like container, computer, reducer, I see they repeat a lot like that. Yep, that's how it used to, that's the order it would go, Marvin. Good question. So we'd have fruit stand here. So now I don't need this container. I'm just going to deal with my component, my fruit stand component, and I'm going to use hooks to help me. So specifically, I'm going to use hooks from React Redux, and I'm going to use the hook useSelector. This behaves identical to our or nearly identical to map state to props. And I'm going to get the hook useDispatch. This is going to replace our map dispatch to props. And we'll say that this is from React Redux. So these are pretty big, like, game changers, essentially. And so I know also, just to be fully like cover it all, and I said there's the optional own props, and that's how we would get our params. Well, who remembers how we get params in a functional component?
Use params.
That's right. Remember, if we had React Router DOM, we would import use params from React router DOM, right? This is the line that replaces the own props instead of own props. Okay, that's how come we don't lose those things. So the way our useSelector works is we can go const and we can name the part of state we want. So let's say I call this fruits, and I can call useSelector, and useSelector takes in a function, and that function takes in the state, or the application state. So I'm going to write state, but I'll say application state. And then from this function, we return whatever slices of state we want. So commonly, I'm going to just do an implicit return. But let's say we had a to-do app where our state looked like this, where we had to-dos. And, oh, fuck it. I'm not going to use to-do. I'm going to do fruit. I'm going to do a fruit stand app where we have like our fruits, and this points to an array. And then maybe we also have farmers or something. Hang on, this is annoying me. There we go. Farmers, and our farmers have their own, or they're like an object of things. Okay, so like let's pretend that this was the application state. In here, I would have to be like, oh, okay, state dot fruits, because I want only the fruit part of my state. So I would be keying into this application store and just getting back my array of fruits. The way our application is set up is just an array. So I'm just going to return state today, like so. So state returns state. So now we have our fruits. So I can still console log fruits. Okay. And then I'm also going to use dispatch. So I'm going to say const dispatch. This is so I can dispatch actions. And I'm just going to call use dispatch and invoke it like so. So now I have dispatch. I need specific actions. So let's say I need my add fruit action. So no problem. I can import that from my actions. Add fruit from // actions / fruit stand actions. Oh man, why is that keep happening?
Are you adding fruit for line 10 or line 16 and 17?
Oh, well, I'm going to be updating all that, but we're not quite there yet.
No, I mean, so you're importing fruit for line 10, where you're destructuring at fruits and fruit.
So I'm still in the process of updating this, but I no longer need these because I'm not passing anything in.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to ask you, where were they coming from?
Yeah, so they're no longer coming from anywhere.
Okay.
We don't need them. We only needed them before because we were getting them from the fruit stand container. But now we don't need them because we're not getting them from fruit stand container. So let me just do this and say like when we had container. So now we don't need that. And so we're able to get our fruits directly out of state using use selector. And dispatch, we get from use dispatch. So I'm importing our add fruit from our actions. So now on the click, I just call dispatch, add fruit. Dispatch, add fruit. Like so. So I just add this line. So now I can just directly dispatch it. And we can go back to our project. And we'll see we have our fruits array. I can add apples and add bananas. All right. So takeaways. This is so much cleaner than having to go use these containers and write it like this. I used to have to do this for every single component that had any state. I would have to make this kind of container with map state to props, map dispatch to props, take out the correct things from state, return it in an object, take the actions I wanted, return them as an object that used dispatch, throw them into connect, export them here inside of my app, call the container instead. Instead, now I can just go use selector, take out what I need from state, and I can grab dispatch and then dispatch my actions directly from my component. Pretty sick. Questions? I'm sure we got some questions. We gotta.
So this like cuts like all of that boilerplate code you were talking about beforehand.
This cuts a lot of it. When we move into, well, this will stay the same from here on out. Even when we add Redux Toolkit, this will stay the same because Redux Toolkit still will use React Redux. Redux Toolkit will just replace some of that other boilerplate that we wrote with all of our action types, action creators, the store. There's something we haven't touched on yet, which we'll touch on tomorrow about like root reducer, combine reducers. React Toolkit will remove all of that, but yeah, this advent, this inclusion of hooks definitely removes a lot of boilerplate code from using all of these containers.
I had a question. So when you're dispatching and you have the add fruit, because we already have it apple, say if we had an input field, we would then put like e.target.value they would be entering.
Interesting. Good question. Let's do that now. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to break you out into groups.
And I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's where we're going anyway. Breakout rooms. Let's see how many. We've got 27 people. Let's say I want groups of.
I'm on here twice, in case you're counting me. Twice.
No problem. I'm just doing groups of 4 and 5. I'm not so worried. So here's your task. add a input field that will dispatch a user's fruit of choice. Okay, so we're gonna try this over the next 15 minutes. Okay, any questions before we break out? Any questions before we break out? Recording. Okay, I'm getting better at this. Thank you, Ashia, for the reminder. Okay, so we decided that we wanted to have an input where we could pass in anything that we wanted. So, sure, let's add a, what do we use when we're dealing with inputs usually?
A
Form.
Form, yeah. So let's go ahead and add a form. I could put everything in the form if I wanted to. Probably not lots and lots of fruits. That doesn't make sense. Okay. And we were going to have a couple of inputs, or an input. So let's go ahead and do an input. Remember, self-closing tag, always. Oops. Self-closing tag, always. I'll add a little placeholder here that says fruit.
Placeholder, not placeholder.
Thank you. Holder! Isn't that like Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold the door.
Holder! Placeholder! What else should our inputs have?
Type.
Type.
Okay, sure. Type is going to default to text automatically, but sure. What else?
Value.
Value. And what should that point to?
Your self-worth.
My self-worth? 100. I'm worth it all. So value needs to point to somewhere in state, right?
Yeah.
So let's say input. I'm just going to call it that. Let's go ahead and add use state. Whoa. Hey now. Okay. And let's go ahead and start with our state. So I'll say state input set input is equal to use state, and it's an empty, starts off as an empty string. So that looks good to me. We should have, what else should we have for our input? Anything? Here. Let's start typing. Uh-oh. What's wrong?
Yeah.
On change.
On change. Okay. So let's go ahead and add. Let me see if I can just format this a little bit nicer. Let's go ahead and add an on change. And on change, it takes in a target, an E, right? And we'll just set input to e.target.value, right? Same line that we've used a lot of times. And I go, okay, it looks good. That works. It's changing. But as soon as I hit enter, we just refresh the page. That sucks. What do I need to be doing?
Prevent default.
Where? But where?
In the form. On submit.
Prevent default.
We gotta do it on this.
On submit.
Create an on submit.
I need a listener on submit. Okay. And what will this do?
Handle submit.
Sounds good. Where's that coming from?
You're gonna make the function.
I'm gonna write it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Const handle submit takes in a E. Now I think I know what you're talking about when you're saying prevent default. Sounds good to me. And let's go ahead and then dispatch, right? Our fruit. So we called it add fruit. Our dispatch is already declared higher up, so we do have access to that, and we will just say our input, right? So let's give that a shot. Here, I'll type in kiwi, enter, and now we have, why did we get apple and kiwi?
Because apple was in the initial, no?
Previous,
Or you
previous
press Apple.
state.
You press the add Apple button.
Did I? Hang on. Kiwi. Enter. No.
Ooh.
I did not. It's.
Clicking on that previous state.
I think it's because these buttons
It's because they're in the form.
are in the
But
form.
if that was the case, why didn't banana add?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. That's weird. I'm gonna just move it outside the form instead of figure it out, and I'll try to figure that out later. That's weird. That's cool though. I think that's really cool. But we do kiwi, cool. We can still add our apples, our bananas. I can say pomegranate. I wish I could spell something like that, right? Questions on that? Okay, so now over 10 minutes, or nah, we can do it faster. Over 6 minutes, I want you to also print, instead of just console logging our fruits, I just want us to see a list of our fruits as it's going, okay? So add view, add a view for our fruits, okay? And I'll write, doesn't have to be in this component, okay? I'm gonna save that. Any questions before I send you off on your own in your rooms? Okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit more time because I kind of like the idea that you might split it into a second component. So we're gonna give you 10 minutes. All right? Any questions?
Corey, can you push this?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, hasta luego, as they say in Rome.
Put like the e-target.
You don't go back to your input. You don't have a value for it. Does it? Oh, you do. The one below it. It's usually you. What is your input initially?
Input is empty.
Or can you? Where is it? Oh, there you go. Put,
I
put
had
like
to put an empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know.
There you go. I think that should work.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So now in here, he wants us to display.
Display. Maybe we need a different component.
Yeah. Me display fruit. Import that. Import display fruit from display fruit. All right.
All right, now I'm back. How did we do? How did this go? I guess I can relaunch the poll real quick. Give me some Give me something, something. Yeah, as they say. Somebody might say that. I don't know. Y'all can see the poll, right?
I already voted. I don't know if
You already
got-
voted? Great. Thank you, Henry, for letting us know. Okay, got a few more. Let's just pump it out real quick. Okay, 17 votes is enough. I'm going to end the poll. Share the results. We're in the 3-4 world. It looks like for the most part.
We can't see the.
Can't see nothing.
Yeah, you shared.
It says that I'm still sharing it. You can't see it?
Nah, we just see a terminal. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, how about now?
Nope. No, you're not. I think you're not. You're just sharing that one screen. You're not sharing the full desktop.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm only sharing the terminal?
Yeah.
With that first screen.
Wait. All right. Hang on.
Try again.
Desktop 2. Well, maybe you just can't see the poll.
Yeah.
You can see the crap behind the terminal too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, don't worry. Most people are in 3s and 4s. More 3-1 just by one vote. So let's go over this in the next 6 minutes. Okay, so I could do it right in here, right? I have my fruits. There's nothing from stopping me from making like a UL here and just doing like fruits.map. Each one will be a fruit. Let me do a fruit and an index. Oops. And I could just return my LI. I don't know why that keeps happening. LI, where I have my key, is my index because I don't want it to complain. And I could just do fruit, right? This is valid. This should work, assuming that I didn't break something else, which is acting like I did.
I think you have to wrap your UL in another div.
Yeah, it's outside of the div.
Oh, okay. I'll just fragment it. Thanks. Okay. Thanks for that catch. Right. So I can see, and I can add apple, banana, kiwi. No big deal, right? We've kind of done this line a lot of times. The other option is I could make another component here where I'm like, right, display fruits, and then I could have my fruits and I could pass in that as props, right? Familiar? Yes?
Yeah, that's how I was approaching it at first.
But again, we're living in Redux world. So in Redux world, I don't even need to do this, right? I could do it. I could make a component anywhere. I could make an entirely new component. Let's do it. And I'm just going to call this fruit cart.js. And let's just go ahead and import React from React. If I want to access state, my application state, what hook do I need?
You say?
Use what?
What are we doing? I'm sorry, repeat that again.
So let's say I have const and I want to do fruit cart. And I need to get my fruits out of my Redux state or store. What do I need? What hook do I need? What hook helps me access my application
Use
state?
selector or
Use selector, right? So I could just do import use selector from React Redux, right? It's still the same as it was earlier. So I can export fruit cart and I can go ahead and use my selector. So I could say const fruits and I could use selector. This takes in a function that takes in state and I'm going to return the parts of state that I want. This happens that I just want the whole state. We'll update that tomorrow. And then I'm just going to return in here. I can go ahead and do what I was doing earlier. So I can just do fruits.map, and same thing as before, fruit, my index, and I can return my li, where my key is my index in this case, because I can't guarantee that my fruits will be unique, and my fruit. So here I can go ahead and import this anywhere because I have access to it in here. So I could even import it here, right? I could even just have my fruit, I think I called it cart. Whoops. Hate when that happens. Fruit cart. It didn't import it for me automatically. That's too bad. But fruit cart from /component. Yep.
Line 4, import.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
/components/ did containers. Oh, Jesus. /fruit cart, right? And this should look, I forgot to export default, my mistake, in my fruit cart itself. Export default. And this looks identical. Interesting. That was not expected. Let's see what happened here. So we had Apple. It's printing everything. I'm multiple times.
You did it twice. That's why you ran it twice. So it's all good. It's normal.
Oh, because I have this.
You called it twice, yeah.
Okay, let me just comment this out for now so it doesn't look like insane. And I can do Apple here. I can write Kiwi. And right, so everything still is behaving the same way. I no longer need this console log. I actually don't need these fruits. I'm actually not using it in this component. Right? I'm just using the dispatch. But the point is with Redux, like these are both sharing state, but they're getting it from their reducer. There's no parent here. Parent is app, but that's all because of this beautiful little wrapper of our provider store, passing in our store to provider, and that's going to give us the ability to access everything else. Any questions on that?
No.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you go back to your browser, every time you type in something, it's updating the state, I think. Or why is it like trying to render every time? Oh, never mind.
It's not. Oh, maybe when you're talking about when I had, when I had the console log here, maybe is what you're thinking.
Oh, maybe. I think so.
So the reason that would have ran, the reason that runs is because I am updating I'm updating this component is getting updated, and so it's console logging this. So every time this component updates, it is re-rendering, and so console log gets called.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. I thought it was the state. I forgot that we had the input too.
Yeah, no, that's just our input. That's causing that change of state for that component. So that's why that component's re-rendering. Good question. Any other questions at all? I see there's something in the chat. Lunch. Yeah, good question, Henry. Absolutely. Although, Henry, I think you and I are doing a podcast, right? Anyway.
No, where?
What's Nova? LOL. Okay, yeah, so